Good evening and welcome to the studio tonight. On tonight's it feels like I should do that when I always say it like that. Good evening. Let me just get rid of the flicker on that light there, which has gone now. And just clean this board down. There's a pussycat been sleeping on it, so I have little tiny cat hairs on, which I want to get rid of, because if I don't and they get onto the pyrographic tool, they smell terrible. Burnt hair has whether it's cat hair or human hair, has a really unpleasant smell. Unfortunately, they stick a little bit to this board because it's got a slightly rough surface. Right. That's all the ones I can see. We'll find the rest as the tool hits them. Now then, I did have an eraser on here because I've just noticed with a little bit of dirt, probably off of one of the cat's paws, so we'll just get rid of that. There we go, and I can still see cat hairs. Never mind, we'll get rid of them. Right, so tonight, underneath of the beam, for at least one thing to do, and then we shall see how we go from there. So, to borrow a catchphrase from Ghostbusters, heat 'em up. Their tool looks a lot cooler than mine though. And thank you Colour Monkey for telling me about that, but we don't need you to tell me about something I know about, so thank you. So we'll just turn that down. Maybe we'll work it out later. Right, so we're on reasonably high heat. So we'll just carry on basically at this point with doing the underneath of the this beam. A little bit of glare off of that light. I'll just move it back a bit. It's really hard to get a good lighting setup. Maybe what I need is some really big powerful lights, but a long way away. But they'd need to be LED lights, otherwise big halogens would be quite hot temperature wise. And the studio already gets quite warm. Especially when you're working off the top of a pyrographic pen like this. It's not a greatly powerful heater, but it does seem to have quite a localized effect. Oops, it is. Ah well. I didn't really particularly want that dark bit, but I'm not that bothered about it. We are this is a concrete beam, as I've mentioned before, so odd bits of texture, dark little bits of slight small cavities, things like that, which is what it will tend to resemble. Not really a problem. The monorail itself, of course, needs to be ideally as smooth as I can make it, because that's a metal skin which has been painted, so you'd expect it to be really smooth. So this is the underneath in shadow, So I want it quite dark, not the darkest it can get, but still relatively dark. It's kind of the secondish darkest area on the whole image. I guess at this point, I'm just thinking there, do I actually want to bother putting in a support pillar? If I do, it will have to go in that space there. And what I'm doing is, I'm studying the same picture that you see. I am studying it a bit sooner than you are. Because one of the things that and I've mentioned it before, so excuse me for repeating myself, but one of the things that the camera does really nicely is look at this image the same way that I would if I got up and took a couple of steps back. So from about sort of 5 or 6 feet away, the camera gives a similar sort of view, which saves me standing up and taking a couple of steps back, which in the studio is quite difficult. But it does give me that sort of slightly distant perspective. So I'm looking at that and thinking whether or not I see that as the underneath of the beam, even though there's nothing really to say it's the underneath. Just your own brain interpreting the image could see it as the underneath because of the colour and its position. And I'm looking at that and think it probably does, in which case do I really want to go and add the complexity of a pillar, which is a bit of extra work, in there if it's not actually going to add any value by telegraphing the fact that this is the underneath of the beam, because that would be its only job in this particular image. I think what I'll do before I make that decision is just finish filling this bit in, then I'll flip the board over and do the bottom edge of this or the other end edge of the beam, and we'll see what it looks like with a sharper edge. At the moment I'm undecided. So that's some of the thoughts that go through my brain as an artist. Whether it goes through other artists' brains, I don't know, but that's the sort of thought process that I go through as I am making an image, whether it's pyrography or anything else. You go through all those sorts of questions in your mind as you're working, trying to decide the composition and just how, what do you need in the image, what you don't. And often trying to leave it as flexible as possible so that you can change your mind. If you decide that you were wrong the first time and actually do need whatever it is that you left out. I also don't mind a variation in shade and colour too much on this. Again, as I say, it's concrete. It's a smoothish concrete, but it is concrete, so I do expect it to have a surface texture, small indents, anything like that, which will mean it doesn't look smooth like metal. And also, given differences in what's underneath it, you'll get different light levels bouncing up and things like that. Okay, let's spin this over. And now we'll effectively what we're going to do now is just sharpen up this edge here, working with the board the other way up. The back of the tool is kind of imprecise. I can see exactly where the nose of the tool is, whereas the back is a lot harder to see. So I can stick to the straight line a lot easier using the nose of the tool here and the board this way up. There's no particular reason why a board has to be any particular way up while you're creating an image. You can paint it upside down, left to right, any way you like, or in this case, as I'm painting with heat, the same thing applies. And indeed, actually, is a trick that artists do employ sometimes, is to turn a canvas upside down, because that way you get a completely different perspective on it and you can see things that you missed. It's something you'll actually more likely see digital artists doing. They'll flip the image left to right, so that way they get a different perspective, and things that looked okay one way will look not so good the other way, and that's because basically you're noticing something you missed before. Your eye and your brain gets very used to an image, and it can completely overlook some things that are wrong with that image because you've just got used to it. So by flipping it, you see the things that you didn't see before, because it's a new image to your brain. And in any case, there's no real right way up or wrong way up to do a painting. There might be a right way up and a wrong way up to the image that you're doing, but that only matters when you hang it. Fluffy Twiglet, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Has your order arrived, or is it still in transit? No, you only ordered it last night. It can't have arrived just yet, can it? Actually, having said which, it was night my time, so it maybe has arrived. I guess it won't necessarily be night your time. I keep forgetting about time zones. Which is really silly, because some of my colleagues do work in different time zones, and I do have to bear that in mind every time I decide I'm going to give them a call. And it's kind of like, actually, no, they won't be at work just yet. You see, I've also got a bad memory. Terrible memory. I think if you sort of compared my memory to a colander, you'd find the colander holds more for longer. Quite often when I buy stuff like that, Fluffy Twiglet, I'll look at what the special delivery prices are, and I'll go, I'll quite often sort of go, well, I'll spend a lot of money and it'd be nice to have it tomorrow, and I'll talk myself into special delivery. Just to rather than order a day or two earlier, talk myself into special delivery. Actually, that's something, I'm going to order some stuff tonight, so that's something I've got to avoid doing tonight, is talking myself into special delivery. I'm hoping to order myself some sterling silver rings, and then I'll make myself a silver metal bracelet. But whilst it'd be quite nice to do that at the weekend, the additional postage may not be. It will be worth it given the price of the sterling silver, but if it doesn't arrive for the weekend, it's kind of tough. I'll just have to do it another time. Okay. Let's have a look. What does that look? Does that look? Does that look like the underneath of the beam? It's an interesting picture upside down. So I'm just trying to decide whether I think that the underneath of the beam I've just done there actually looks like the underneath of the beam, or whether I need to telegraph it in some way by putting in a support beam here, which would, the three-dimensional shape of it, because you'd sort of see the face level with this, and then you'd sort of see the inside, and there'd be a line, which is the corner, and the slight difference in shading, which would telegraph the fact that it is an underneath, but I'm kind of reluctant to put it in. And that reluctant thing kind of says, I probably don't think it would look right if I did. So I'm, my own mind is resisting putting it in. And it's not something it's not really something I can put in after the fact, because I'd want a light area, which if I put dark across, will stay dark across. It just wouldn't fit with another light side on this. So if I was going to do it, it's going to be about there. Okay, let's not put it in for the minute. I did notice there's a discrepancy in colour. This is lighter than that area, but what I think I'm going to do is just bring this to about here, leave it for a while, see whether it grows on me. Oh, by the way, I looked at some of those pictures last night, Fluffy Twiggler. Interesting. The turtle struck me because something didn't look quite right on it. I was trying to think what it was. I don't know if you were intending it to be something other than just the turtle, you know, a natural turtle. I think what it was is its right paw, front arm, leg, flipper kind of didn't look right. But otherwise it was good. And the blue hand, was it your hand? Because I couldn't quite decide whether it was you got the blue was on your hand or you were wearing a glove that was blue. Because some of the markings on the way the blue had spread in certain places just looked like it would do, or it looks like it does when I wear a glove and I've got paint on the glove. The sort of the spidering out sort of look. So I was kind of intrigued. As I was signing up for the site, I kind of wondered at what point it was going to ask me for my shoe size, the way it was asking questions. Like I say, that paint though, that blue paint looked more like an ink stain rather than a paint. The way it gone onto your hand. I guess the blue probably fooled the camera as well, but it made your hand actually look paler, which gave the impression of you wearing a latex glove. Turtle suddenly offended. Oh, okay. It sort of, I felt a bit uncomfortable with the right flipper on it. The left, left looked okay. The rest of the shape and the watercolor on it, but it just me about that. It's almost as though it wasn't there. Anyway, so now I've seen you. That's assuming the photographs of people were. Yeah, you just said it was your hand, so. So now we're even. You've seen me, I've seen you. Was that the image that was on the floor then? Was that your friend with the marker pens that just drew? So it was ink. So that could have been quite challenging to get. How long did you end up with a blue hand for? I can imagine that stayed around for quite a while. Because ink being a stain, effectively, it doesn't, generally speaking, doesn't come off. Although printing ink, I don't actually know. That's obviously is a different beast. Is printing ink. Oh, okay. So it combined for about a week. Oh dear. You wouldn't have had much problem joining the Blue Man group for a while then. Yeah, first gallery. I've not done anything like that yet, so I can imagine that being quite a nerve-wracking experience. I like the colour blue actually, by the way. That blue is a nice blue. There's certain colours that I really like, and that blue was close to it. Actually, I guess I'm kind of a sucker for any saturated colour, to be honest. It rather is kind of like ooh, shiny with me sometimes. Oh, okay. Yeah. You got one over on them. Yeah. Mind you, it's when you say it's then when you say things like yeah, and now that we've done it, they're not going to be allowed to do it again either. Or is it just an excuse for a glass of wine and some food? Yeah, well, if you can exhibit in a gallery and be there and to explain silly things to people, then you've got to have confidence. So yeah, and I'll bet a lot of people who maybe thought that their stuff wasn't particularly, they thought it wasn't good, when they get other people coming in who do not say the same thing, then that's a confidence boost as well. Okay, for the minute I've deliberately left this space so that I can put a support beam in if I want to do so. I'll see how the rest develops, I think, and we'll decide on that a little bit later on. Now, cat ears, yeah. I'm looking at this and I think time to do a little bit more before we come down and do this pan underneath, and then do something about foliage underneath that. And I'm not quite sure how to do the foliage. I think I'm going to do is probably switch to, when I do the foliage, switch to my other flat shader and sort of do stamps type thing for leaves. I don't know, let's have a look. That's a bit dark. An hour broken. Now, you did the text. I did the text upside. The blue looked like a bird, so you tried to fit it. Oh. The picture's upside down then. Yeah, now now I can see the bird now. Interesting. Now, as a blue that I'd like, it would have to be a little bit more vibrant, saturated blue. That's just the colour, not to do with what it's on or anything like that, or whether that should be any other colour. It's just that, yeah, just a colour, a saturated. I'm kind of a sucker for. Yeah, but I had to look at it upside down to see that. It's then it just once you can see it, it's there. But yeah. Yeah, the beak, and then you've got the tail, almost like a tail out to one side as well. A bit like the ink blobs thing, isn't it? Where people see things in ink blobs and stuff like that. You get some interesting stuff. Yeah, well, it's the Bob Ross stuff, isn't it? The happy accident. I'm going to turn this down because I want to be a little bit subtle. Because I want to do a little bit of shading on this colouring here. I want to lighten it as we go up a little bit to help with the impression of it being cylindrical. Because I'm looking at this, and it still looks a little bit flat. Actually, I've got to fix that white line as well. But we'll look at that later. So I kind of want to darken down here and then come up a bit lighter. Just to give a slight graduation. Hopefully should lead your eye into thinking it's more three-dimensional, more cylindrical shaped. So I've turned the temperature down so that it doesn't react really quickly. So I'm getting a very slight difference in shade as I go over, and therefore I've got a lot more control over just how dark it is. Now it is a real subtle change, and I can only just see it. Daft as it sounds, the camera's probably seeing it better than me. Oh yeah, I noticed that one. It looks really weird with that double face, because they're both sharp and in focus, and it looked really creepy in a way. Did that. It's a sort of image I would not be surprised to see in a science fiction film of something. Now that's the blue I like, or a blue I like. I know it's probably meant to be white. But yes, yeah, they were good with the light trails. They're not easy to do as well. To get a room that's dark enough, and actually to find a camera that you can leave the shutter open on isn't that easy these days. But then to not overload it with a super bright light and yeah. I saw on the internet, it was actually because I was looking at Adafruit, who sell components in the States and things, electronic components. I can't remember quite how it was associated with them, but they were showing people actually doing light writing outside, and doing things with like a bike, or using a microcontroller like an Arduino to drive a length of addressable LEDs, so they could flash them, change the colours and things, and doing things like riding a bike with one of these things on it across the frame, and then doing all the synchronization. So you got a picture built, as the single light LED array sort of flashed on and off as it went across. It actually built an image, like a flag, or I don't know, a cartoon character, something like this, and then attaching them to wheels and stuff. And it was some of the stuff that they were doing. Oh, I think actually they had one person doing like using it like a wand, if you like, and doing sort of a dance. So you got a light trail which was more like a ribbon, which was quite fun to see. Well, with photography, you can cheat with photography though, can't you? I mean, even, especially on or even on on film, you just flip the negative, and there you go. It's the right way around. Especially in that sort of environment, you wouldn't really notice, I don't think. So that's because writing backwards is hard. Some of those were done, weren't they? You were doing them instead of pointing at the camera. You were photographing the light spot as you went around. Now that might have been interesting to throw a small laser in there as well, just to see what that was like. Sorry, I just remembered a prank that I played once. We had we'd somebody come somewhere. I can't remember where it was now. But we've got a visiting sort of lecturer, if you like, come in to demonstrate fibre optics and lasers through fibre optics, and I had a laser pen, and I whenever he sort of turned on one of the lasers going into the fibre, or he was playing about with the fibre, I'd point the laser somewhere, and eventually he realised that there was this spot of laser light, and he was going through all the equipment trying to work out where it was coming from. It was funny at the time. And they even apologised to him afterwards. But he actually, once he realised what at the end what has actually gone on, he found it quite funny, or he said he did. Okay, that kind of looks like three composite images. I can see scallop shells. I can see what looks like sprayed ink on glass, and then I can see what looks like somebody's put their hands on it and got. Yeah, there you go. Okay, with a handprint. Yeah. You can get some yeah, you can get some really interesting photographs or effects with photographs if you're underdeveloped, can't you? Because they can come out really ghostly looking, can certain things. And I played about with it for a little while until I got an image that I developed normally, a black and white image. It developed normally, but it had a ghostly image in it, and at which point I thought, I've had enough with this, and started just developing normally. I can remember trying to play around with composite images as well, in sort of the printing process. So printing effectively sort of exposing two or more images over the top of one of the paper, and getting some very interesting effects. All of which, of course, now that is done digitally, is not half as much fun. It's kind of too easy, too easy these days. Um, Sorry, I'm just having a look and I can't see that one you mentioned. Or I'm maybe not looking at this right. Actually, I like your trademark, by the way. That looks really good. I like that a lot. Number 2. Okay, I didn't see that one. I probably haven't gone through. I don't know how Tumblr works, so I probably hadn't clicked to the right thing. Okay. Ectillion, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Close, but it's actually a monorail. It's quite a slow speed train. A monorail from Disney World from about 10 to 15 years ago is the when this particular monorail was running. I believe they've replaced them at least once since then. I don't actually know what they look like at the moment, but it does kind of look like it should be a high-speed train, shouldn't it? But they were quite small, quite slow. Personal questions are against terms and conditions, don't forget. Yeah, the flower. Yeah, no, I really do like that one. That's a really nice image. Sorry, guys, those Fluffy Twiglet and I are discussing some of her art, which I've got which she very kindly let me take a look at, so that it's not on screen. So we were just discussing some of those. Yeah, it's futuristic from about 15 years. I mean, it still looks futuristic now, doesn't it? That's why I love the shape of it, which is why I'm doing it now. It's based on my very first, not my very first, one of my first airbrush pictures, which I did from a photograph which I'd taken of the train. So that's my reference picture that I'm working with at the moment, to sort of do something along that sort of lines, but doing it as a pyrographic image. What are you sorry for, Fluffy Twiglet? I love trains. I like the shape of trains. Yeah, no, I love trains. You're right. But it's down to the shape of the trains I like. There's some trains I look at and I just wouldn't even be interested in painting them or photographing them. But I'm not actually. I'm not the sort of person that'll go to a railway station and just take pictures of trains. I mean, this, for example, was I was on holiday and they were going overhead all the time. So, and as Ectillion says there, they look futuristic. I've got quite a few photographs of them, but there again, when you get somewhere like Disney World, you take photographs of everything. But yes, I've done what have I done? Yeah, 3 trains now, I guess. There's this one. There's another pyrographic one, which I haven't finished, which was done as a practice. And then there's 2 in the Punchcraft, isn't there? So Yeah, aircraft mainly, but is I'm kind of have a more of an interest in. But even so, that's still a hey, that's going overhead. That looks nice. And take a picture, and that's about it. Creams, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Well, that was the idea, Ectillion, for Epcot in Disney World. Everything was supposed to look like space age in the future. I mean, that was that's in its name, isn't it? Experimental Prototype Community of Tomorrow. Let's just do a little bit with these. That's hotter than I wanted it to be, but never mind. So these on the actual train, I gather, are or were air vents, but they were sort of sunk into the surface. So we're looking up at it. I'm kind of trying to get the dark edge and then sort of the sculpted little bit, which would look like a shadow. So how are you doing, Creams? Let me turn this down a bit more. These are a little bit darker than I wanted them to be. Oh, well, I would hope that you'd be better than that, but yeah, that's better than bad. Ectillion, thank you very much for the follow. That is most kind of you. I seem to be in a better mood than I thought this evening, but I'm not doing too bad, thank you very much. It's Wednesday today, yeah. Now, it was yesterday I woke up with a migraine headache. Today I've been fine. It's just been somewhat of a busy day today, so it's kind of nice to finish work and start and do some artwork for a while. Actually, you may be right, you know. You may well be right there, Fluffy Twiglet. You know, don't denigrate yourself. I mean, yes, they we were discussing it, and yes, I was admiring it, and we were, you know, it's brought a few memories back of slight misdemeanors and things, and so yeah, it could quite well be the case, Fluffy Twiglet. Yeah. There you go, a documented case where your art has made people feel better. So, Ectillian, you're just interested in sort of art forms or trains or pyrography, or was it just something that looked interesting? Because although I'm doing pyrography at the moment, it is not by any means the only thing I do on stream. I currently do 4 other things in sequence. So next, after this is complete, we'll move on to doing some some carving. Whether it's relief carving, I don't know. After that, we probably will be doing some scrape or scratch board, and then after that would be some punchcraft, and then after that some jewellery. So that lot takes about 10 weeks in a cycle. I love work, I can watch it all day. That's okay. That's, I'd be interested in the answer to Fluffy Twiglet. There's a lot of people that claim they're not artists, but actually are in practice in various forms. As long as you don't define art too narrowly. Ideally, I want to shape that edge, but I actually like that curve. So I'm just tweak this side a little bit. Down the edge off a bit. Hey, Default Guy, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening. Nice to see you. Once you realised I was watching this afternoon. Luckily, you finished just before I had to go. I say watching. I was kind of half watching because I was at work, but you get the idea, I believe. Now I'm going to have to tweak that side. I can't stretch this one too much because the curve that comes there has got to be a smooth curve. This one you don't see that edge, so you're kind of expecting this edge to match that. So I'm going to have to tweak that a little bit. Indeed, Fluffy Twiglet. Dear. What we're missing there is the is the bit where somebody says the art form, what you're doing is cool, because then my immediate reaction is, nah, this is really hot. But that's just my sense of humour, which kicks in at that moment. That's better. Oh, Ada, you know, even when you've got an ETA, when you're waiting for something, it's. I think the ETA is sometime later this week, but with something like that, it's. No, that's not quite as funny when it's like that, Fluffy Twiglet. It's, I know it's a silly joke, but you know, it just, as I say, it's just my sense of humour. Okay, I'll probably cool this off a bit too much now. Yeah. Now, I was going to say the trick, but the thing I'm trying for here is that this is really smooth. I don't have any sort of texture really. It's a metallic surface, so I'm trying to keep this thing really smooth and not get any sort of blobs or marks from basically not using the tool appropriately. Because one of the things I have to remember is that when this tool isn't on the wood, it's heating up, and if I put it down and don't move it, it creates a small brown mark. So what I have to do is to remember that to start with, and when I put the tool down, I'm landing it like an aeroplane, so it's moving before I touch down, and that helps almost eliminate getting that little brown mark that I would otherwise get, because I don't really want that on here. You know, I can explain it away, it's a reflection, but I don't want to explain it away. I'm fairly convinced that Murphy works for all the delivery services around here, because you can guarantee that when you've got a parcel being delivered, as you drive out the end of the road, you can wait in as long as you like, but as you drive out the end of the road, you're going to see a parcel van at the other end. And when you get back 10 minutes later, they've left a little note that says you weren't in. And it happens no matter what time of day you go out, no matter what day it is or which carrier it is, it's always something like that happens. that a little bit warmer. So quite often when I'm doing things like this, I'm controlling the heat by how fast I'm moving this tool. Generally speaking, as the because I'm moving it quite slowly, but that's generally how I'll control the amount of heat on something like this. But I don't want to slow down too much, because the heat, where the heat sort of transfers, if you slow down too much, you tend to stutter. When you stutter, the tool's stopping. When the tool stops, it tends to transfer more heat quicker, and you get a little blob. So normally, whilst I sort of slow down to create a darker texture, in this particular case what I'm doing is turning the heat up a little bit. That way I can keep the tool moving at a reasonably fast rate, but still make it a little, make the shade a little bit darker, because I'm applying more heat. So you quite often will sort of mix and match the different techniques of creating shading depending on just what the situation is. Oh, we've had postmen actually walk up to the door and put a note through that says you weren't in. Not even knock. And then you open the door to them and they go, "Oh, I didn't bring it." So why are you leaving a note that says you weren't in? I know they couldn't really leave one that sort of says we couldn't be bothered bringing it, but they could have sort of said like, it was too big or too awkward, or we're just too much to carry. Please can you pick it up or arrange for redelivery. That would have been fair, but you're not in. He does kind of get you like that 84 guy. It's we sometimes get, or we used to get that with people ringing as well, and they'd say, we've been trying to ring you all day, and nobody's answered the phone. Okay, that's funny. There's an answering machine on which works. Not only that, there's somebody in all day. The phone's not rung. So if you are ringing, you're ringing the wrong number. Quite lucky we've got undercover where they do leave them if they do that fluffy twiglet, so don't suffer them from that too much. But it kind of is awkward because, well, I suppose if anybody's going to know whether you're going to be in or not, the postman probably does, since they see everything going on. But just leaving a parcel around, and you might not even be in for the next 3 days, or you've gone away for a long weekend or something, and you've always got to wonder whether if they do that, it's your parcel safe, shall we say. Sorry if you're watching this and looking at, what am I doing, because it's not, I don't seem to be doing much. I'm very slowly darkening this bottom area off. It is quite a subtle change though, that's going on, but I don't want to go too dark too quickly, because I do only want a subtle difference between the top and the bottom, which I'm starting to develop now. Jasper 5020, good evening, welcome. I think Amazon have started delivering their own stuff now, haven't they? You found it a week later. That would be. I guess that was quite a soggy parcel. Well, send them it back. Yeah, as delivered. Well, I'm doing quite well, Jasper. I hope you are. Trains. The funny thing is, isn't it? I mean, it's always, annoyances like that, or it's always the talking point, isn't it? It's not, hey, the postman delivered the parcel exactly on time, and it was handed to me. It wasn't damaged, and they said good morning, and they didn't get me up at the crack of dawn to open the door. We don't often say that sort of thing. Yeah, and actually, most of the post persons, I suppose I should say, that we get here actually are really good. Thank you very much, Jasper. That's kind of you. Just doing a bit of really subtle shading at the moment. I'm trying to decide if it's actually working. I'm looking at the camera output, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm looking at. It gives me a little bit better perspective than actually looking at the piece in real life. I think we maybe need to darken the windows off a little bit. For which I can use a little bit more heat. Actually, I can probably use a lot more heat, but we shall see. Yeah, turn it up a bit to about there. I don't want to turn it up too much there. Heat gets kind of, I won't say uncontrollable, but difficult to control smoothly if I turn this up too much. I'm kind of darkening this off because everything is sort of shade wise is relative, so you're kind of comparing this to this, and that impacts on your view of what this looks like in terms of shading and stuff like that. So these windows, which are tinted, and they're quite darkly tinted in or were on the trains, so in photographs they quite often show up quite well dark, very dark purple. So I think I probably just need them a bit darker to work with the shade that's been developed over here. Nope, I missed that here. I got the tool. Now the edge of this window, of course, is you'd expect to be really a sharp edge, which is one thing I've got to be careful to maintain. Things like this, which is the beam concrete, you expect to be less need for it to be really sharp, but things like the edge of the glass, if it's not real sharp edge, it won't look correct, basically. What I may do at the end of this as well is, once the whole thing is done, might just do some small areas of scraping in certain places on the glass, but in particular, because glass edges are always rounded, obviously, well, not obviously, but they're rounded off so they're not sharp, and so the slight different angles, you can sometimes just get light flares off of them. So I can do that with something like a scalpel and just scrape a small area at the end, so I've no intention of going over it again, but then it'll just stand out as extremely white, just like a light flash or a flare off the glass. Grass paper. Can you? Well, you'd have to have quite long grass, wouldn't you, to do that? Because the short grass doesn't have many fibres in. And then I guess unless you want green paper, you've got a lot of bleaching to do. I guess you could have quite a bit of fun with that, couldn't you, Fluffy Twig? Like a botanical project, so you turn in a watercolour, and when they, of something, I don't know, like a building or a train, and when they go, that's not botanical, you go, yeah, it is. What do you think the paper's made out of? got to be a little bit careful to try and keep this tool flat. I don't want to raise it up on its nose, because it will create a really sharp edge, which I don't want in the middle of the glass. Whilst I want it on the edge, I don't want it in the middle. Right, I'm not. This whitish area here again is a light flare or a light flash reflection off of the glass, and so the easiest way of doing, well, you have to think of those things in advance doing something like this, because you want to leave them lighter. You don't want to have to try and lighten up something after the fact. So quite often in, well, airbrush painting for example, they always tell you to work light to dark. Sorry, dark to light, the other way around. In here you kind of have to work the other way around, light to dark. So leaving your light areas and then darkening around it and things like that. So it's kind of a backwards technique. But it is something you have to sort of plan in advance. I could in principle use the same scraping technique as I'm talking about doing for small things like that, but in big areas the rough texture that you got from it would not look appropriate. You know, it's meant to be glass, it's meant to be quite smooth, so if you've got a rough texture, a visible rough texture, it would tend to detract from it looking like glass. Not going right up to the edge, so we create a soft edge, and sort of it's going from bright white to quite dark, so I don't want just a straight sudden transition. So I'm leaving the earlier sort of lighter marking in place. Okay, so this is darkening off quite nicely. A little slowly, but as I say, that gives me the opportunity to have more control. That went a little bit darker than I intended. We'll see how that goes. What I may do is just use that as the target colour and change the colours around it to match that target colour. Yeah, it did go a bit darker than I intended, so I'm probably going to have to adjust things to that sort of colour. Okay, Fluffy Twiglet, have a good evening. Thank you for dropping in, and good luck on getting your stuff tomorrow. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad. We've got some slight dark little bits in there. The camera's picking up on those more than they do show up in real life. Oh, you're not, are you? I thought that was telepathy creams. How come I don't play music? Quite simply because most music is copyright, and to play music on Twitch, technically I'm broadcasting, which means that I need to have a license to do that from whomever owns the copyright. And you know, if you don't, then in theory you can be taken to court for breaking copyright and be fined. And also Twitch can as well, which is why Twitch mute recorded videos when they believe that it contains copyright music. So what I need to do is find some copyright free music, or music where the copyright the owner has given permission for them to be broadcast, and then I've got to find that which I like to listen to and then I'll play some. And it is on the stack of things to do, is to find some copyright music, because it would be nice, but otherwise it's nice when I'm doing art like this to listen to something in the background. When I'm not on stream, I'll be usually listening to something like a stream as background music or background sound. So yeah, it's a good point, but true, but it's kind of like if they decide to catch you, you've got no defense against it. So why put yourself in that position to start with, so to speak? And indeed, it seems to matter less when you're partnered, to be honest, than it does when you're not. But no, I understand. I kind of, though it's as an artist, if you like, I kind of wouldn't like somebody to take this image and represent it as their own, or use it to promote something that they're doing, without having at least asked me and got my agreement to it. So if I wouldn't like it for something that I'm doing, I kind of really don't feel comfortable with doing it to somebody else. So that's the other way. Well, I should be around tomorrow doing some more of this creams. So you should find me. 8 PM UK time is about when I start. Give or take a few minutes sometimes. I am, as I say, it is on the stack. At some point there will be some music. As I say, it'll be music that I like, which might not be the same thing. Doing stuff like this, I generally speaking, like sort of fairly quiet. I won't say meditative music, but sort of fairly quiet, sort of chill out type music, shall we say, rather than something more upbeat. Part of the reason for that is when I'm using a pen, if I've got a music with a fast beat on it, I tend to start to try and do things in time with the music, and that's not necessarily a good thing for the artwork. Yeah, ambient music, that's right. Yeah, true, Eddie. But then there's a couple of there's quite a few on Spotify which they have obtained the licenses for, basically. But have to be a member of Spotify for that, and you have to pay the. If I remember correctly, with Spotify, you have to pay the subscription fee, otherwise you get adverts. And broadcasting adverts when they're not yours is not a good thing either. Gummy Q, good evening. Yeah, it would be an ambient music. Okay. Good source of things like copyright-free pictures are a good source for reference pictures as well, because even reference pictures, if they're not if what you're doing is not a copy of a reference picture, then great. If you want to copy a reference picture, then if they are copyright-free, then that's a good way of doing it. Or if you want to show them on stream. That's a good way of doing it. There's quite a lot of red tape around things sometimes, which are there originally for very good reasons, but it does make things awkward sometimes in on the internet because of the nature of it, the widespread nature and you know, differences in different rules in different countries and things like that can be quite challenging. And actually, no. Yes, I do know somebody who plays guitar, and I'm sure they'd be willing to record some stuff, but then you have to make sure that you have the copyright for it, and what they're playing is not a copyright song in the first place, because for them to record a copyrighted song they need permission to do that, and they therefore potentially need to pay royalties. So you can't just sort of take you know, a common song or a popular, you know, chart song, for example, and get somebody else to play it, and then therefore it's okay. That's still breaking copyright. It's the same thing as you know, image wise, for example, if you were to take this and as an image and just flip it black for white, for example, you'd still be breaking copyright, even though it's not the same image, because it's flipped. It is substantially the same image, which is kind of how copyright describes it. You've got to have something which is not substantially the same. If it's based on an existing piece of work, there's got to be a substantial difference in order for it to not be not come under copyright. It kind of is quite a complex area. Seems like your coaster, AD. You can do that for yourself, but you can't sell it without a license. Same sort of idea. And whilst a lot of the copyright stuff is based around commercial gain, the definition, there isn't a definition of commercial gain, which leaves things open to interpretation. And so, for example, just broadcasting on Twitch, whilst there may be no commercial gain for me, and that's still debatable as to what that means, there is for Twitch. So, and if you read your terms and conditions, if I remember correctly, you indemnify them, which means if they get sued for you breaking copyright, they don't, you do. Indeed, Eddie. It's I mean, yeah, I mean that ultimately it comes down to, on Twitch's point of view, I guess they use the sound signatures to see if they match in against anything that they know the sound signatures of, and you know, of copyrighted music, and if it does, then it then comes down to, you know, they immediately assume it does. Your only way of convincing them is to, if you like, get someone at Twitch to listen to both of them, and then that way you can determine if they are the same or not. But sound signatures are not too bad. So I think if you got somebody to play your own music or their own music, then yes, you wouldn't necessarily have a problem. And the easiest way to deal with that is you just on the like the details below the stream window, for example, you just put music is licensed or copyright free from this particular location. And indeed it looks like quite a few there are quite a few artists that will give you a license to broadcast it on Twitch, for example, providing that's what you do. You attribute the music to them below on the stream window, or below the stream window in the info. And that way you both get something out of it. You get the music and they get some exposure. I guess their idea then is at some point in the future they're able to charge for the music. But and there again, I guess there is also music sometimes that's released under Creative Commons, and then that is a license that will allow you to broadcast it if you wish. And that's generally speaking, people are not seeking to monetize that in any way or form. They just release it because they enjoyed doing it. That's not quite as dark, so I'm going to have to go over that bit again. But we'll finish off the whole way to the edge before we go over it again. Oops, I think that was almost too dark. Really frustrating bit sometimes with this is you'll manage to get a line, dark line, and a light with two dark lines with a light bit in between, and you're trying to get the bit in between, and the two end bits keep getting darker, and it gets quite frustrating at that point. Just trying to get the tool in between so that you can actually sort of darken the light area. You sort of, and sometimes the trick is to just go away and come back, because the wood retains the heat for a while. So if you let it cool off, you can then come back sometimes and get it on the second attempt. Trying really hard here though not to get any dark lines if I can avoid it. I'm trying to make this quite a smooth sort of texture. I know the camera's not showing that up quite so much as, so it's showing it's not quite so smooth. But in real life, actually, you know, in here, in the presence of it, it's a lot smoother than it looks like on camera. But yes, I've got a dark area there. The other little tricks that I've learnt when I'm trying to do this as well, sometimes, as I mentioned, that light dark light sort of problem, is just to go very slightly at an angle, and that seems to also work quite well to get rid of that light patch in the middle. Yeah, so this is going darker than I really intended it to, but I kind of, you know, accidentally made something darker. This is the only way I've got of really correcting that, is to make everything else around it match. Yes, a Twitch one, I believe you mentioned, which you said you were doing just for your own purposes. Hence, I didn't mention anything about copyright. Have you decided to make a start on it? Have you? Yeah, the purple actually would be a nice. Well, she's the Twitch purple. Just trying to think. The dark lavender, isn't it? It's more like the darker lavender colour than the purple, I guess. But That will be an interesting one to see when you do it. Okay, let's flip this up and just go right down to the bottom edge. I kind of probably need it to do this window anyway, because you can see, well, the camera's showing it a bit better than here, but there's a less of a contrast between this paint between the stripe and the window than I wanted. I kind of wanted a little bit more contrast, so the fact that I'm having to darken this down will give me that contrast anyway, so I'm not I'm not upset about having to this going darker than I originally intended it to do. When I started this, I wasn't 100% sure how dark or what shade the window would actually be. It is, from references, it is one of the darkest elements. Not quite as dark as the stripe, because the stripe is actually black. But it was the windows. When you look at them in the photographs, or in my photographs, on this train in particular, they were really dark purple, and not quite black, but close to it. But I kind of didn't really want to get them that dark. It kind of wouldn't look right, I don't think. So it's going to go still a bit darker, so if I do need to, that's not particularly a problem. $2,288 plus the odd spare for when they escape. New purple rather than lavender. Oh, we got another new colour available, have we, Eddie Folgay? I'm not keeping up. Oh, and white. Don't see white used a great deal. I keep trying to think of a reason to use it, but most of the time, you want the shiny effect that you get from the silver colour. Ah, okay. Ah, so it is the real deep. Yeah. Is it? I hadn't noticed that. I guess it's not. I guess it's not shiny. So yeah, I probably just. Well, I've never really studied it, so. Yeah, that purple though. It's a terrible colour for the stream. I got some here. Another. Yeah. I can see why the cameras do sort of. I can see why the cameras almost do pick them up as blue, because sometimes they look blue to me, depending on the light. But I'm guessing that's the colour you're talking about. I'm getting to recognise it now because it doesn't look like the blue does. So when I see it on somebody's stream, I sort of go, "Ah, that's purple," even though it looks blue. It's an odd sort of blue on camera. It's got some sort of quality to it that doesn't quite look the right thing when it looks when it the blue doesn't look quite right as blue. Weird. Yeah, actually you were mentioning it this afternoon, weren't you? Same thing. Or was it yesterday? I think you were showing one of the bracelets. Maybe you ought to record them creams and then we can broadcast it as music without needing copyright. Oh, you can supply the copyright. Right, I'm just using the camera here to help me create a consistent sort of colour, so you can see like a slightly lighter area just above where the pen is here. So I'm just using the camera just to let me look at that, and then I can colour that and make it basically go away. Right. Well, the offer was the hair creams. Right. Okie dokie. I think that will do for tonight. It's now just after 10 o'clock, which is about the right time to stop. It's getting a little bit warm in here with all this this heat. Or sitting over the heat is probably more like it. But we're getting on with it. Most of the work today has been doing the underneath of the beam, which I'm still not decided. This patch is left here because I'm not quite convinced of whether or not the fact that this is just dark and it's underneath this lighter bit there makes it look like it is the underneath of the beam. So one of the things I could do to make that more obvious is to put a support pillar in here, and then the 3D shape of the pillar effectively would tell you that this is underneath, and then that problem would go away. But I'm not sure about that. I don't want to put the pillar in if I can avoid it. It's kind of an unnecessary complexity. It may well be if we put some bushes in, or some, some trees or something in the background, that it will become even more obvious what it is, and in which case then I don't need that and I can fill it in. So that's why that's been left. Most of the rest of the stream then has been gradually darkening this lighter dark area in this sort of area around here, so that it's darker down towards the bottom and lighter at the top. That ought to improve the impression of it being curved, and it sort of looks more like that to me as I'm looking at it now than it did earlier. I think I've probably a little bit more work to do, but what I was finding is that the window was too light next to it, and that was probably affecting my perception of the colour that was here. So that's when I started to darken off this window, trying to do it fairly slowly to try and get a consistent colour. I'm not doing too bad. I mean, this is part of this is in the nature of practicing being able to do just that. I've got a couple of dark patches here, which I'm not that bothered about as long as I can get a consistent sort of colour or shade across the rest of it. And up here will be slightly lighter again because of the curve. Because it's glass, it reflects, so an odd sort of mark or something in it, especially if we've got trees around, will kind of just look like a reflection. So I'm not unduly concerned about them being there as it stands at the moment. But anyway, that's it for tonight. Tomorrow we will just carry on, more of the same. The main bulk of the image is there. It's adding in more of the shading details. There are some more details to add in, as I say, some sort of background in there as well, possibly something sky-wise, clouds perhaps, not sure. We could perhaps do a sunset behind it, because Pyrography, of course, is great for sunsets. It's got that reddy brown tint of sunsets, so I could do a graduated sky perhaps, but that's a way away just yet. We've got a lot of time to spend at the moment just bringing up the smaller shading details. But anyway, that's it, as I say, for tonight. Thank you all for watching. You too as well, creams. What I'm going to do now is say, if there's anybody watching that isn't following, I do of course encourage you to do so. Push the follow button. That way Twitch will, in theory, notify you when I go live, and you'll be able to watch again. But if you just like the notification and not to follow, that's quite alright. You can follow me on Twitter if you wish. There's a tweet goes out when I go live as well. And details for that are on the end plate in a moment, or are below the stream window. If you'd just like to catch me tomorrow, or on future streams, from about 8 PM UK time, 1900 hours GMT, about 2 hours 10 minutes ago. That's it, thank you. See you all again. Thank you, Ectahillion, and I will see you tomorrow. Bye bye.